Welcome to And It's Live, the podcast which dives deep into football's most iconic seasons, stories, and what ifs. If you love football, history, tactics, and nostalgia, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell, and drop us a like on YouTube so you don't miss an episode. Hello and welcome back to the main event. It's taken a wee while. Adam is back with us. How are we doing, Adam?
Doing fine, thank you. Yeah, I listened to the podcast that you guys recorded in my absence, and it was very enjoyable. But yeah, it's good to get back into the real thing, shall we say? So yeah, looking forward to it.
David, we're not the real thing. How are we doing?
Not the real thing. I like that. I think we've done a decent job in minding the shop while Adam was away. I think we managed to entertain ourselves first and foremost, which is always
priority number one.
Number one. But it is good to have him back, and it's great to get stuck into this particular season, which is a lot more interesting at this stage than I had remembered.
The group stage stuff.
Yeah.
Well, there is a difference for the first time. The UEFA Cup is now the Europa League. And we've got the champions and non-champions pathways towards qualification, because a lot of concern about seeding, about huge clubs, same clubs all the time, blah, blah, blah. And these complaints around those extra teams in the big leagues not really having to fight their way through, at least. And now you have that when we get to the kind of playoff part of the qualification process. And Adam, there's some big ties there, I guess, from a Scottish perspective. Celtic versus Arsenal being the most obvious from that non-champions route, non-champions path, and Arsenal being very, very convincing winners. But it did try to allay those concerns. So if you were a champion of a maybe a smaller nation, you had a theoretically easier route to the Champions League.
Yeah, I think theoretically is the word there. We've seen quite a few examples on in history, or what is history now, of it being slightly more difficult, just the way things fall. It's always the same. You see it with as recently as the Europa League in current times, where teams are finishing ninth and getting easier draws than teams that finish higher up. It's always the way these things go. When you've got knockouts, you've got a chance, you've got rules that can be flexed, or football as a game itself can just be very unpredictable when you try and put people into these nice little buckets, and it doesn't quite happen. So yeah, in theory, I completely agree with that. Arsenal were on top form. There's a lot of goals in these qualifying rounds. Poor old Real get scudded 12-0 on aggregate by Partizan, Glentoran as well, 10-0 against Maccabi. There's a lot of goals in the early ones, and then a lot of goals and even in the playoffs as well. Atletico Madrid winning 5-2 against Panathinaikos, Lyon winning 8-2 in aggregate against Anderlecht. Two teams that, again, thinking about it now, non-champions path, that seems a little bit odd, perhaps. That's such a rare, not a big game, but you know what I mean. That feels like a Europa League knockout game. Never mind a Champions League qualifier. So yeah, lots of quirks in there, but yeah, some good games too.
Well, let's get going then as we kick off the group stage. As we always do, try to cover it over two shows, get a bit of depth, etc. And David, Group A, we've got yet another French side doing good things in Bordeaux.
We really do, and such a sad story, really, because Bordeaux, of course, now play in the 4th division in France, and at the time of recording, their star player is Andy Carroll on $3,500 a week, a month, sorry, because he just likes living in France, and who can blame him? It's a lovely pace of life, but and if you like wine, there's surely no better place to live than Bordeaux. But the pace of change from what they achieved this particular season to now is frightening. That is a hell of a group to top.
This is Bayern Munich and Juventus and Maccabi Haifa. Very much bringing up the rear, it must be said, with the good old 0 points. But
a good old-fashioned 0 points, -8 goal difference. They were there to be the whipping boys. But if you, when this draw was made, folks, said that's a three-way dance, then well done to you. I certainly didn't at the time. I thought this would be between Bayern Munich and Juventus, and I thought Bordeaux would be the UEFA Cup qualifiers. But they get off to a good start. They get a draw over in Italy, coming back from a goal behind. And from then on in, they just quietly ease their way into it. 1-0 victory at home to Maccabi Haifa. That's nothing special. It takes a late goal as well from Ciani, who was one of the standout players in this. They then, another come from behind victory at home to Bayern Munich. So they're sitting in 7 points in a group where the big boys are taking points off each other. And then the sensational result, 2-0 away in Germany, defeated by a superb tactical performance from them. Johan Gorkuf was superb that night, absolutely superb. But then they welcome Juve to the Stade Chaban Delmas in Bordeaux. Thank you. And they get that one as well. And it's someone we may remember, Marouane Chamakh. He of the famous comb over. He gets the decisive goal in that one. And they are tearing up trees in this group, which means a sense of panic sets in for the two big boys, who would have, I think, quite understandably looked at this. French football is, of course, one of the top 5 leagues, but I think that even then there was a sense of it was 5th in the top 5 leagues. And I think that there was a sense that Bordeaux were not one of the elite sides in it. They're a good side to have grabbed the qualification spot, but the big boys then start panicking when it becomes clear, hang on a minute, only one of us is going through here. And that leads to, fairly frank at the end, fairly big matches. Juve get a victory over Maccabi. But then they go down, as I say, to Bordeaux. And then in the crucial tie towards the end, Juventus won Bayern Munich 4.
And it's Juve with the whip hand. That's the final game. Yep. Juve are ahead by a point. They just need a point to see themselves through and get absolutely eviscerated there.
They take the lead. That's it. They put themselves in dream position, only needing a draw, a goal up inside 20 minutes, and they completely fall apart. And it is tense. 10 minutes to go, Bayern are 2-1 up. Juve start to commit forward, and they get done twice on the break, and that is it. But if you watch the footage, and as always, I heard the listeners go and do it, it's all there on. I watch with Italian commentary. My Italian isn't great, but what I will say is you could sense by the tone is international, I think, and by the tone and the faces around the stadium, this was not supposed to happen. But it is just a really great example that we've come over in this group stage many times before, but this is, I think, an almost textbook example of when you add in that third, that dangerous option, it can really change things about. And then for the bigger guns, who more often than not, if we look at a group before it, we say those two through, them third, them bottom, it generally pans out that way. But when it doesn't, panic set in here.
Well, I think as well it's worth, sorry, I was just going to say it's worth saying about Bordeaux. Obviously they won the league the year before, Laurent Blanc was there, but I think, like David said, I didn't expect no one really expected them to come in and and top that group. I mean, that draw away to Juventus and Turin was the only points that they dropped. Buffon said, I think afterwards, that they underestimated them pretty much. They got that 1-0 win, but Bordeaux were playing really well. I watched a couple of the highlights, and Buffon had quite a few good saves to make in that game before Placel eventually scored. So if they underestimated them in the first game, I think they just never really looked back from there, Bordeaux. But I guess it's worth chatting about France at the time. As David said, it is still the 5th the fifth best league at this time, but it's going through that a kind of weird little phase. This is just a couple of years before PSG get. I don't know when the takeover was. My head's saying 2011 or something like that. Maybe for when they got taken over. But this is that wee period there where, remember, Evian come the year after, appear from nowhere, and I think the first season in Ligue 1, and they win the league, and then I always remember that really good Lille team with Eden Hazard.
Eden Hazard,
comes. That's only like 2 years after. I feel like that's 2011.
It felt open, didn't it? It felt for a couple of years like of all the top 5 leagues, this was the most open, because somebody seemed to just appear each year and do pretty well. And there was that sense of that you used to have in England, Martin. Remember in the 80s that if a team put together a good team and got a tailwind behind them, they could actually go and win it. But that was obliterated by PSG, obviously.
Obviously, Lyon had. We spoke years ago on this show about the 90s being everyone. It was different. A new team appeared every year. You're sort of starting to see it here, to less effect. It has to be said, but Lyon sort of dominated, and then obviously in the last 10, 15 years we've seen PSG dominating. So, there was a wee bit of a free for all at this stage. It also worth saying as well that this is not Juventus. I mean, they had. This is their third season back up after Calciopoli. They had Ranieri for the first 2 seasons, who did great, to be fair. I think they finished third in the first season, and then he got sacked at the tail end of 2009 because they weren't going to win the league against that inner team. They eventually finished second. Ciro Ferrara came in, and they got 2 wins in the last 2 games to beat Milan to second place. But then this season here, they're terrible. They finished 7th. Ciro Ferrara gets sacked in January, and Alberto Zaccheroni comes in. So they I think, got rid of Ranieri rashly because he wasn't winning the league the season after. He came back up after Calciopoli, and they went from bad to worse these next 2 seasons. They're 7th, and it's only really Conte coming back in 2011 summer that they get their act together. We see guys like Pirlo, Vidal, Chiellini coming to the fore massively. Pogba will appear. Marquisio starts to become that player as well. So
Mandzukic.
So yeah, there's maybe just a bit of an opportunity there that you see Juventus' name and you think they should go through, and they probably still should go through, but there's just that little bit of a perfect storm, if you like, with Bordeaux having a season or 2 that will never be repeated for them anytime soon, unfortunately, and maybe Juventus just not quite been at their peak. But yeah, full credit to Bordeaux going through with 16 points out of 18 and against those 2 is something else.
Yeah, nice to hear Johan Gorkuf getting a mention. There's so much thought of him at that time. He's 23, 24 around this season.
He went to Milan before this and came back.
I really did like him at this time. Yeah, you're right, Adam. PSG was at the following season and things change in France. We'll touch on Bayern later on, Adam, obviously, because you're going to get to the final for anyone who's just catching up on the Champions League history. If you're kind of binging it, if you've had your head under a stone for 30 odd years. I do wonder how, and I completely understand what you're saying about that Juventus team, but to go there, final day, you need a win, you're 1-0 down, to win 4-1, how that sets that team up to go into those knockouts and kind of take things forward.
No, definitely. I think you're spot on. This is it's Van Gaal's. I think this is Van Gaal's first season, isn't it? Yeah. So they're right into the whole Robben Ribéry kind of situation. Maybe just before you're starting to see the guys that you associate it with it now in terms of Neuer and Philip Lahm and Thomas Muller, etc. So, I think you could say it's maybe a little bit of a transition, shall we say, from the year before, which wasn't great. They finished second, therefore it's always a total disaster. But we mentioned Klinsmann was there and Jupp Heynckes come back in and blah blah blah. So maybe a bit of a transitional season, if you like, before, and they've just sort of needed that almost in a weird way, or put themselves in the position that they needed that, just because they are still kind of finding their feet, and you know what Van Gaal's like. If it's not 100% perfect. There's going to be issues, and he's going to micromanage and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I can understand it. I think they're probably fortunate they didn't come up against the Juventus of a couple of years before or a couple of years after as well.
Yeah, you're just on that precipice of German football. They're also going to go to the World Cup in South Africa at the end of this season and have a jolly good time. I mean, David mentioned, Adam, there are a few groups where you're like, okay, there are two, and it is two, and it's very clear. But there are quite a few groups here. There's a tasty, spicy set of three that really do give us something to work with. Probably not Group B, although I might be proved wrong on that. Manchester United, fresh from that defeat in Rome that we spoke about, which seems ages ago now. They top the group. This is around the time, I think, where Manchester United getting an easy group is one of those kind of cliches every time the Champions League draw came around. But CSKA Moscow, who would be second, Besiktas would bring up the rear, and Wolfsburg would fall into that Europa League space. United beating them at the very end, I think. Again, a team that had a lot of buzz about them, Adam, in Bundesliga, and just well backed by a corporation, as quite a few teams are. The Works team didn't quite happen long term, but there was a lot of noise about Wolfsburg.
There was. Felix Magath obviously won the Bundesliga with them last year. Grafite was sensational for them. Remember when Rangers played him the year before. I think that was maybe only like his second club in Europe, but he scored a barrel load of goals for them around about this time. Edin Džeko as well. I was going to say still kicking a ball, but I guess it was just kicking a ball back then, and he's still kicking a ball now. But the amount of goals he got for them as well. One of these weird situations popping up again that we've spoken about a lot. Not necessarily how difficult it is to have great seasons in the league and in Europe, but how difficult it is to have a great season in the league and then not be absolutely atrocious the year after. And I think you're starting to see that with these teams. Unfortunately, we see it nowadays with, I don't know, West Ham or a Brighton that managed to get a fantastic season in the Premier League, and by fantastic, it's like finishing 6th or something like that. They get into Europe, and then their squad is just not good enough, and they end up having a worse season almost. Certainly domestically. Back then, it was you'll get a team like Bordeaux or you'll get a team like Wolfsburg that will win the league every so often. That wasn't outlandish, but then the season after, they're absolutely terrible. It's like that pressure. So we've won it. Most of our players are never going to get anything better than this in their careers. We'll just enjoy the next season, and it ends up pretty badly. So trying to juggle that, I think, if you look at Wolfsburg, coming into the Champions League as the Bundesliga winners, and then having almost the pressure of the Bundesliga as well, it's so rare that it goes right for them. And I think they were 7th or 8th, I think, in the Bundesliga this year. And obviously just group stages of the Champions League, it's just such a big level. So again, maybe take that into account. If it had been a slightly different scenario, would they have been the ones that went up ahead of CSKA Moscow? But yeah, I liked bits of this team, just those goals up front. I love 2 strikers, if it's 2 out of 3 or 2 out of 2, that just are a great partnership and score goals. It probably felt like such a throwback even at this time, but even more so now. It was great to see.
Yeah, shout for Grafite as well. I I've not heard that name for so long. This is pushing so many of my buttons. I show David, Manchester United top the group, but they are in a bit of transition.
Yeah.
Cristiano has gone to Real Madrid, despite the assurances of the manager that he wouldn't sell them a virus, blah blah blah.
Well, he didn't technically.
Well, he didn't. Antonio Valencia was someone who came in for the impressed at Wigan, and Michael Owen.
Yes,
Old Trafford.
probably says a lot about this United side that he's a top scorer in this group. They ease through this group, don't they? Without ever really putting on the afterburners. They get it wrapped up sharpish, opening 3 matches, 3 wins, 3 tight wins, but 3 victories to get them through. Suffer a shock defeat at home to Besiktas, which they shouldn't have. I think we would all agree on that, but they aren't really taking it seriously. But then rebound with a hat trick for Owen over in Wolfsburg. It's a shame United didn't notice a striker who scored against them that night who would have a big impact in Manchester, and that is, of course, Džeko, who has a good campaign. But yeah, United are never in any danger here. But you're right, it is a side that is kind of looking for a little bit of star quality, dare I say?
Yeah. I mean, there's big boots to fill there, and usually big clubs, and usually Ferguson would immediately try and do that, but you can't, even with 80 million kicking about in cash. You're not
replacing
Ronaldo. He's irreplaceable.
No, he is, and I could see that. We've spoken about this before. I was going to say I could see the sense in the Owen move. I can and I can't, though, because to me this is one of those classic Ferguson things of I have always liked him. Ergo, I will get him. And
it wasn't politically expedient years ago. It's impossible politically years ago. It isn't now. He's on the arse end of his career, but I can whisper in life. And listen, you mentioned that hat-trick in the Champions League. Of course, that was a winner against City Old Trafford.
I
think early on in that season. Quite ridiculous, 4-3. So he would pop up, but that's what Michael Owen's career basically post 2002 maybe was. It was popping up with things. Yeah.
It was moments because he was perennially injured. I did think that, let's be honest, right from the start in his time at Newcastle, he couldn't have made it clearer, short of wearing a T-shirt saying "I'm here for the wages," that he was there for the wages. But I did sense, because you could. I always got the impression. I think Newcastle fans would back me. In fact, I've heard Alan Shearer say the same. Never mind any supporter saying that Owen was kind of, I'm doing you a favour here. Ex-Liverpool, Real Madrid, Ballon d'Or winner. At United, he didn't have that, and I thought he would rediscover the hunger. And when he did play, he tended to score, but it's telling when he did play. He plays in the group games where it's done. He plays in matches at the end of the season. He gets thrown on against City in that 4-3 game at 3-2, and he can make a difference. But it is a United team that is a bit in a transition, and of course it's the difficult thing for a football manager is that you can't take a year out and say, okay, we've had this good run, I'm now going to go away and tinker for a bit. You don't have that luxury at Man United. It's a good group for them, let's be honest, with the vast experience they have in the group, with the players that they still can count upon. They were always going to get through that group. But if you'd said to me that this is a team that's going to go quite far in it, I think even Rob, our erstwhile guest on here, would have said it didn't look like it. But you nailed it, Martin. You're not. There's a reason Real Madrid want Cristiano Ronaldo. You are not even with all that money in your back pocket. He's going there because he is extraordinary. When a club like Real Madrid pay that kind of money, and also prepare the throne for him. You are coming here as they say in US sports, as the franchise player. We are going to base pretty much everything around you, from the marketing. You're the face of the club. It's because he's an exceptional football player. So I kind of got what Ferguson did. I don't want to immediately go out and get somebody and give him the same shirt and on you go, you're Ronaldo Mark II. And in a way that sort of allows it. But then eventually, of course, we know what he does is he goes and gets Van Persie. And just, bugger it, I'm not here for the long haul, and he eventually replaces those goals with.
Well, this is what I find interesting. You mentioned there you can't do that, and Manchester United just basically took a year off. Well, he kind of did when Jose arrived, but he built his younger team. Manchester United were not troubling the League Championship for a wee while, and then they did come back because he built that fourth team, whatever, and the youth and dynamism of Rooney and Ronaldo, the unpredictability of Tevez, and we've gone through them. He isn't doing that this time.
No,
and we'll speak about this as the years go on. But yeah, it is going to be Chelsea win this year, then they'll win the next year. Not a particularly brilliant season the next year. City win in the most ridiculous circumstances, and then he goes and buys Van Persie. It's 2012. He gets Van Persie, and fuck it, it's throwing everything.
That's exactly what it was.
And it's his last. It's his last. But I think those last few years and everything, to be honest, that we've seen from United since was all probably in the offing. He was they were a kind of battered plane steered into the runway over these few years, but they'll be back in a Champions League final. We shouldn't forget next season. But it's just a different time. That longer term vision is basically what I'm saying. Maybe isn't there at this moment what it was 2003, 4. Yeah. Okay. Well, who is next then in Group C? Now here we are, Davey. 3 former winners and poor old Zurich. FC Zurich, again, very much bottom of Group C, because you got Real Madrid, you got Milan, and you have Marseille. Spit, boo, hiss, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, Real Madrid win the group pretty easily. Ronaldo scores a couple on his Champions League debut for Madrid in Switzerland. Where are all three of these teams? Because Marseille, we haven't spoken a lot about. But yeah, Madrid back.
Yeah, Madrid back. Yeah, this is a really interesting one. Where are the three? Well, Real Madrid are pissed at where they have been the last couple of seasons, Martin, where, as we mentioned, they had just gone out of the equation, hadn't they, on our previous shows, and they're not having this. It's not just Ronaldo. Remember, they've also brought in Kaka as well at this point. So, and they still have Raul, they still have Gonzalo Higuain. They are still, packed with real talent, but there are still names that are a legacy of that kind of dark period of the late 2000s. Royston Drentha's there, Baptista's out on loan, but it's that sort of thing, where they're moving away from what they've done and into what they want to be. Yeah, Marseille are kind of hard to put. I remember a lot of talk about Marseille around about this time, but also a sense that they are going to be picked off, which was an interesting one, because you wouldn't get that, I don't think, with a team in England who are in the Champions League. Oh, they're full of good young players. They are going to be picked off. And maybe that's to do with the TV money, the distribution of it. Teams in England aren't under the same pressure. So there was a sense of Marseille are going to be picked apart, and people are going to come in and get their players. But this is a really interesting group, because it does go up and down a little bit throughout it. First of all, Milan go to Marseille, get the victory, but then they lose at home to Zurich, which is a remarkable result in the context of it. Then the next match, they go to Madrid and they win, which is absolutely wild. Hold Madrid to a draw the next match after it. But then they draw again with Milan and lose to Real Madrid towards the end of the group. So it was such an up and down group for them, and obviously Madrid, the fact that they've picked up that defeat in there. I think what you've got here are teams going in different directions and maybe at an intersection. So they're roughly in the same place, Real Madrid and Milan, but they're heading in different directions. This is a Milan team that have peaked, that have achieved as much as they're going to achieve, and they are heading down the way. And this is a Real Madrid team that is coming out of a dark period, very dark period, of some awful defeats the last couple of years I've described in this show, but are beginning to move in the right direction again. And I always find that interesting when there's this intersection between the two. The fact that Kaka is wearing white in this tells you how the dynamic has totally shifted now. 10 years ago, I don't think this is as easy as that. This is when Ronaldo's leaving Spain to go to Italy, the original Ronaldo. Now here's a star player leaving, and the dynamic has shifted a little bit. And I think you see that. But this group is wild. There's also loads of goals in it. If you look at, the amount of goals, there's a 6-1, there's a 5-2, there's a couple of 3-2s. It was a very open group because I think this is a group of flux where there are sides who are not, and I'm sorry, by the way, to Zurich. I hope you enjoyed that win. Any Zurich fans, it was a great win in Milan. That's the extent to which I'm going to talk about you in this group. It then becomes about the other three. And Marseille sort of blow it because they have an opportunity, they put themselves in a position to go and do it. And then as it gets towards the end, they fail to do so, and they fail to put it. And there was a sense, I remember reading World Soccer at the time, that this is a good side, but it's not going to be a good side that develops because already players' agents are talking about it, and it was going to get picked apart. So for me, this group is almost a perfect snapshot of where European football is at the moment. The dynamism in terms of we are the biggest clubs, we can get who we want, of Real Madrid and Barcelona becomes almost hegemonic at this period. And the Italian clubs, while coming off, Milan's recent history at this point is better than Real Madrid's.
Absolutely is.
That's changing, but that is changing, and it's changing in a way that, as we record in 2025, it has not swung back, has never looked like swinging back, and I doubt very much will.
Yeah. Adam, it looks like Real Madrid are very much back, as I said. Ronaldo's in the goals, they top the group. But neither of these clubs, sorry to spoil for a couple of weeks later, are going to enjoy the last 16. There's going to be more disappointment for Real Madrid yet again. Ronaldo has not fixed that, and quite shocking circumstances actually. Milan are going to get utterly battered by the aforementioned United in transition, mainly because one of their players is having the form of his career around that particular moment. What's up with Milan here? Who's in charge? Where are they going, apart from, as David's intimated, south?
Yeah, I think Milan have been the dominant team, really. Not when I don't know if they've won it the most they might have. What we've been speaking about in the last sort of 15 years or so, I think they've certainly been there the most, right from the very first year up until 2 years ago. They've been competing in those finals, but as David said, they're very much on the slide now. I think obviously it's the financial aspect of it that we know with the Premier League starting to properly come to the fore now. The whole Real Madrid, Barcelona, as much as they hated each other around about this time, they obviously always do hate each other, but it was extra special, if you like, coming into the next couple of years. And that just ramps everything up for me. These Galactico signings, Messi coming to the fore, all that sort of stuff brings La Liga into huge focus, whereas the 15 years that we've had, it's been Barcelona for a bit, Real Madrid for a bit, Barcelona for a bit, then one of them goes down. This period that we're coming into here is where both of them are at the peak of their powers, and it's very rare that I think we can say that. There'll be great title races in there. There'll be Real Madrid inevitably winning lots of things, but how many seasons can we really say they were neck and neck for all of it? So I think this is a really special time coming up for Spain, which I guess then demotes Italy down to that third place if they weren't there already. So I think there's just a little bit of all of that, and it's mostly built by finances. This is the time where Ancelotti has gone. He left them in 2009, and he went to Chelsea at this point. So he's away, and it's Leonardo. If I'm not mistaken, Leonardo was doing something else. I don't mean just fishing or whatever. I'm fairly sure. Was this the time, David? You might remember that he was he the sporting director, and then he come back as the manager, or was that a little bit?
You're right. That was the order that it transpired.
He was never a manager, really, was he? He should be a
No,
pundit. He should be an
he's
agent. He should just be
big
just
handsome
whining
bastard.
and dining and just
Yeah,
Offer
he's just-
administrator vibes.
He's a guy who is, you see him, he's wearing a beautiful suit with a pair of trainers that you and I could not get away with. He has a starlet on his arm, just above the Cartier wristwatch, and he is going to a restaurant where he will eat a tiny portion of food that costs $2,000. That's what he is. He is not a man in a tracksuit with a whistle who is telling you to do doggies and rondos.
And in true Milan, as in Milan the city fashion, he rocks up as manager here for a year, doesn't do very well, and then Inter say, actually, do you want to come and be our manager for a year?
Amazing.
Right after it, which is one of those things that can only really seem to exist in that very strange city.
So weird,
But anyway,
that's a rivalry. Anyway, yeah, so they're in bother.
I'm diverging. Yes, they are very much in bother. They were third the year before under Ancelotti. Kaka was there. Pato starting to make a bit of a name for himself. He was one I had really high hopes for because
they justified the Kaka sale.
Yeah, because we've got the next Kaka.
We've got the next one off the cab. When the next cab off the rank is already here.
And I don't remember scoffing at that, to be honest.
It didn't sound ludicrous. And again, remember, we know what we know now. But at the time, this is a club that had been in 2 European Cup finals, won one, recently. It had a period. We're not that far away from the 90s, with Milan. If they're saying that they've got this player, why wouldn't we believe them?
Yeah,
they've done it before.
Given they literally had the previous big player, so they kind of know what they're talking about.
And he'd been there a while. It wasn't as if it was like he just appeared. He'd been there a couple of years. I'm sure. When he came straight from Brazil, he'd done quite well. I think ultimately with Pato, injuries were the big thing. But I liked him. I thought he was more of a number 9 than Kaka, but a sort of similar style. I would say that kind of running and dribbling. Obviously a bit more of an eye for a goal. I did have high hopes for him, and I think it was just the injuries that kind of killed him. At this point, Ronaldinho is here. He has a decent season for Milan this year. Gets a fair few goals, plays a lot of games. He's just about ready for giving it up. I think at this stage, but he has a decent 2 seasons in Italy. I think for them. So I think that sort of sums it up. You're trying to replace Kaka with someone a little bit younger who you hope is going to do you a turn, and you've still got a couple of the older guys in there as well, desperately hanging on. Seedorf being another example who's very, very close to the end at this point. So they're I feel like we were predicting the falling off a cliff of Milan 10 years before in terms of their older players, going back to Costa Curta and Baresi here. There's a fair few in here who time is catching up with within the next 2 years.
They get bang for their buck, don't they, Milan? With those,
they do.
Players. They stretch that right out to retirement, yeah.
And they've also Nesta's there as well. He's only another couple of years away. They're going to make one of the worst decisions ever. I think, or certainly one of the worst decisions ever in a year or so, where they let Pirlo go for free, and he goes to Juventus and has those incredible 3 or 4 years there. So yeah, I think all of that combined, it's just one of those things. They're losing all those big players. They just don't have the funds or the strategy or the dynamism to replace them effectively. I think this isn't an era of scouring the globe to find the next talent with data scientists and all that sort of stuff. We're not quite at that stage yet. Who's got the most money can afford to bring in the best players. Milan are, I think, 10 years out of date at this point and all of that sort of stuff. Still looking to within Italy to try and find the players that they need. They're not even really tapping into emerging markets, and by emerging markets at this stage I mean like France. Really, I think like they're not at that stage. I'm pretty sure they have a Aubameyang at this point, and they let him go as a teenager. So yeah, there's just a lot short-term decisions here, allied to the fact that they don't have the money to buy themselves out of trouble. And I think it sort of backs up what David said earlier on about the inevitable slide.
Final group tonight, Group D. Again, one on paper, you're thinking, well, with all respect to Apoel of Cyprus, there are 3 teams here and this could be very interesting. It wasn't like that in the end at all. I'll just go through these 3 teams in order. Dave, I'll start with you, Chelsea. Ancelotti's there now, as Adam said. Not a huge Abramovich-style spending spree, really. Daniel Sturridge comes in from City for, I don't know, about 5 million or something like that. I mean, Yuri Zhirkov from Siska for 18, right? That's
all above board, I'm sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And Nemanja Matic actually coming in for £1.5 million. They got their money's worth out of that for sure. So not a big outlay. Here's the new dream kind of thing, but maybe no need to. The players are still there. They're organising themselves. Anelka is happy-ish. And you've got guys like Kalou coming. They're starting to really kind of find their feet. Kind of perfect little situation, I think, for Ancelotti just to come in and corral and use and kind of put together.
You'd forgotten that Chelsea had Fabio Barini, hadn't you? Admit it.
Of course.
Yeah, you are. Everybody does. And you've forgotten he played for Liverpool as well, haven't you?
I never forget that.
All right, okay. Yeah, look, this is a great side, and it will end up with the double in England. And they are playing some sensational football. We've discussed on this show before that Chelsea, there is a tendency to sometimes think of them almost as this like wall of muscle who would shut the other side out, and then Frank Lampard would score. Or they would launch it long to Drogba and he would score. This side plays some great shit this season. It really does. It's a really excellent side. Players love the manager, and we know they can be quite choosy, this Chelsea squad. And if they're not having a manager, they are not having that manager. But Ancelotti is, as we've mentioned on this before, he is almost the ultimate star wrangler, isn't he? He comes in and he's like, okay, lads, I'm going to create an environment for you to flourish, and then I'm going to allow you to go and flourish. And this Chelsea team domestically certainly does. You're right, Anelka's probably as settled as he gets for a while. They've also got the likes of Malouda, Ballack, obviously the aforementioned Frank Lampard, and Didier Drogba. The very strong defence, and excellent midfielders and a range of midfielders who can do different things. It's a really balanced side, and it has options in every position. And it's an interesting one, because I think that when we think about Chelsea, 21st century Chelsea, this is maybe the overlooked side, isn't it? This Ancelotti one. Maybe because it doesn't have the European Cup.
And we're in the era of the domineering, charismatic managers who stamp themselves over a team, I suppose. And there's only one man in this era for Chelsea that does that. You can't be bigger than Mourinho from the 10 years in between his first coming and him coming again. So it's possible, which is fine for Carlo Ancelotti at this moment in time.
It's a right good team. No, he doesn't give a flying fuck. But he puts together an excellent side that plays attacking football, scores goals, and does win the double. It's a very successful season for Chelsea. So they were in a good mood going into this group, I think it's fair to say. Things had kind of settled down domestically. It did look an interesting group. I'll turn it back to you boys for the discussion on Atletico. But just before I do, isn't it so difficult as we sit here recording in 2025 to remember an Atletico pre-Simeone? So much as he stamped his It's probably the nearest to Ferguson, I think, in European football. Since
it feels freakish. It feels freakish now in this day and age for someone to do that. It was pre-Simeone, Adam. Atletico Madrid third and a distant third. Porto filling in the gaps. Just on those two sides, then Porto, Radamel Falcao, Hulk. That's a tandem to mess with up front. Bit of beauty and brawn there. Is Kun Aguero just basically holding this Atletico team together for one more season after this, and then he'll join City, obviously, or do they have other issues that explains why they're so far adrift? 3 points, 3 draws, not even a win.
Yeah. Good question. I think he absolutely is the main man for them. Albeit they've got Diego Forlan as well, who scores a load of goals.
I think he gets 27 this season.
I think we spoke about him potentially just finding his home somewhere, if you like. And I think Villarreal, certainly when he was there right after Man United, was that, and he did kick on at Atletico. He scored a load of goals there, but yeah, he's going to try again. I think in a year or two to go to a bigger club, in a Milan bigger club than Atletico Madrid at this
stage. At this stage of the game, yeah. I think there's some talent in that squad. David De Gea, for example, but there is a lot of journeymen in that squad. It's not what you imagine a modern Atletico to be. It is a mixture of young talent, a star player in Forlan, a star player in Aguero, who I think still qualifies as young talent at this stage.
Yeah, definitely.
But there are a lot of guys with 3 or 4 clubs in that squad, and that kind of tells you where they are. They were very reliant on Aguero, understandably so, because he was so exciting. I mean, we all know he's a great player. He's gone down in history as such. But there were a few. I mean, they changed managers throughout in October, and our old friend Kiki Flores is in for the rest of the season. Well, that's never a good sign, is it? But that there's a sense of drift which doesn't really get arrested at Atleti until Simeone comes in and revitalises the whole club. And this is a squad that, as I say, they've picked up players. It's not a put-together squad, and it doesn't have the identity. And again, we can, I'm pretty certain I know Adam's views on the identity, playing identity of Atleti, and I think the listeners will have as well after sharing this journey with us. But it is an identity. This side doesn't have it. This side's transfer policy is, well, he's a good player, and if we get this good player to add to this other good player, that'll surely work. It doesn't work, and you see that in this group. They are poor, and they are taken apart regularly in this group.
Do you know? I was literally just about to make that same point that you made there. When you're in a league like this, I think when you're going to win it once in a decade if you're lucky. You need an identity, and this is probably why I struggle with La Liga more than any of the other big 5 leagues. I watch not as much as you, David, but I watch a fair amount of football. I wouldn't watch Valencia against Villarreal, to be honest. Like now, as in present day, I don't feel that there is a style that you could peg. And I know football is getting more modern, and styles and leagues are not really a thing anymore, but you look at the Premier League and how tactically interesting it is just now. Serie A still will always be tactically interesting. You're going to get some right good games in the Bundesliga because nobody can defend, really. Even in Holland as well, it's similar. You're going to get some teams that are doing things. I really struggle outside of the top 3 now to pick out what a team's identity is, and I think that it's just went full circle to what you've said here. Looking through the Atletico Madrid team, it's just a collection of guys, collection of players. They have 2 managers a year. there isn't enough time to embed something. For all your spawn, I don't love the Simeone style of play. You can't.
I thought so.
You can't deny the impact, and it's nice to have a plan. I'd rather have a plan that I seen something that you're working towards, and it's maybe not exactly what you want as a football fan. I'd rather have a plan where you can see progression and you can see something happening.
Oh, it's eye bleed stuff at times. I mean,
just this mishmash of nothing.
This is nothing. This is nothing with a Sergio Aguero on top of it.
Yeah, so I think that's why I struggle with Spain a little bit as a casual fan, because even Tiki Taka at its peak, there wasn't really that many teams in the league doing that, and you've got teams like the teams that appeared. I'm kind of struggling for. There was a few names. Levante were quite high up, weren't they, for a bit in La Liga, and they were playing a sort of more rudimentary style of play. I think you've had Granada, Malaga coming up as well. Had a few years up there, but it's not.
Girona in recent times had, but again, it's that agricultural football. Yeah,
it's all functional stuff.
Real Mallorca back in the day.
You wouldn't really think is a Spanish style of play, and
you're totally correct. Basically, you've got Madrid whose style of play is win, and they're not entirely bothered about how they go about it. Particularly, generally, the last few years of success has been counter-attacking with ludicrous pace. And phenomenal forward players built on a good defence. They've learned that lesson. But Barca, they do have a style. They sometimes slip out of it and get themselves into $2 billion worth of debt while they're at it. But then, because they're forced almost to go back, as we're seeing now, and they've got this amazing group of young players that have come through, which they do regularly, too regularly for it to be luck. That they do that. And under Simeone at Atleti, you do have a defined style, and it's almost cinematic in that you've got the way that the big two play, and the Atletico Madrid are the anti that, aren't they? They are like, no, right, we'll be the blood and guts side, and we'll be the out with that. You consistent ones, the only ones I can. Sevilla, perhaps, have always had a general guiding ethos. Which has worked very well for them in Europe, more so in Europe than domestic. I mean, there's a reason they're in the Europa League so many years to win it, or the UEFA Cup as was, and that's because it didn't always translate domestically. But there are a lot of sides in Spain who, I think, because of the success of the bigger sides and Sevilla in European competitions, because of the success of the national team, there is this sense among some supporters or some fans of football that, they must have all played like that circa 2010. They really didn't.
Gentlemen, that'll do us for this week. As usual, our pre-recording meeting was like, do we have enough for 2 shows in the group stages? And here we are, 52 minutes in and only halfway through. Thank you, David.
Oh, it's good to be back in the road, lads.
Yeah, good to have you back, Adamski.
Thank you.
Plenty more to come next week, as there's far more to enjoy in the group stage of 09-10 in the Champions League. Until then, bye for now. If you enjoyed the show and want to help us grow, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. On YouTube, search for And It's Live Podcast. We've got new deep dives, drafts and breakdowns dropping every other day.